Hi guys and welcome along to this video series on Massive X. My name is Larry Holcomb and I'm here with Groove 3 to talk to you about this synth. Now the original Massive from Native Instruments came out in 2007. It's actually the first video series I did for Groove 3. So it's about 12 years old now, and this is a very much anticipated sequel to the original Massive. That was just a game changer synthesizer and arguably had a massive hand in the sound of certain genres that developed after its release. I'm thinking especially dubstep. I don't think dubstep would have sounded the way it ended up sounding if it hadn't been for Massive. So this is a really cool update, and it's built on the ethos of the original Massive to give you hugely increased flexibility and scope for interesting sound design. Okay, so in this first video, we're just going to have a little introduction and look at the interface, and we're also going to have a look at the presets and saving a preset. So it's a good idea to start with the interface so we, from the beginning, understand where everything is and how it's named. So we'll start off with the header up here. Now the header is the area of the synth where we can find our presets to start with. We also have the option to save a preset on the header as well. We have our macro controls. Now there used to be just 8 macro controls in the original Massive, but here we have another 8 added, so we have 16 in total. And you can see these first 8 here have been already assigned to parameters as part of the preset. Now the preset I'm using is actually under Quick Start, and it's an initialized patch. So it's just a basic sawtooth wave. But you can see here we've got certain parameters that have been mapped to macros, and you can see here we're working on a filter cutoff. Now we have pitch bend here, modulation, and also aftertouch. So some MIDI implementation here. We also have a drop-down menu here that allows us to access our preset folder, take us onto the web page about Massive X. We can change the size depending on your screen size. We can track the amount of CPU we're using, and we can also rescan our presets as well. So when we're looking at the presets, let's just actually choose one. We can use these arrows here to scroll through the next presets or the previous. We also have a basic volume control here that we can change. And if we click on this button here, it gives us some information about Massive X, including what version we have here as well. So that is our header. Okay, so the next section we have is the section that contains our audio modules. So these are the areas we can create sound and also manipulate it. Now these correspond to our routing page, so we can actually route sound around in Massive X. So you can think of it as being a semi-modular synth. So we can route different modules from here to other modules to create the sound we're looking for. So we have a kind of pitch area here, like a global pitch. Then we have 2 oscillators here. Now Massive originally had 3 oscillators. There is the third oscillator that we can access that we'll look at later in the video series, but we have 2 basic oscillators here. We then have a noise section going into a filter. We then have our insert effects, an amp section, and then finally we have our send effects here, and that is our audio modules area. Okay, so the next area we have is this navigation bar here. Now the navigation bar allows us to determine what we're going to see in this area underneath. So at the moment we have routing selected, so we can see the routing of the synth. We click on voice, it's going to allow us to choose parameters that relate to the voicing. Now if we click on these tabs here, we can actually access our modulators. Now if I click on the first modulator here, the view down here, the editor area, will update to show us these 3 modulators. I click on the 4th one, it's going to update to show us the next 3, and so on. So we have performers here, and then assignable envelopes or LFOs, and then finally we have these trackers here. We're going to go through all this in more detail as the video series goes on, and then we also have a kind of randomizer. So by clicking on these different tabs, we can access our different modulators. We're going to talk about modulation in much more detail as the video series develops, but in the same way as it was for Massive 1, if we click and drag on one of these crosshair tools, we can drop into the box underneath a parameter which is modulatable, and then simply click and drag upwards to assign the amount we want to modulate. Okay, so there's a lot going on in that patch. Let's try a simpler reinitialize patch to hear what's going on. So I'll bring down the filter cutoff, and then I'll assign LFO4, drop it in the box. If I drag upwards, as I said, we'll hear modulation. So that's the same as it was in MassFX, really easy to implement modulation. And that is the basic outline of our interface. Now finally, let's actually go through and save a preset. We'll call this test preset. And now this is accessible from the user folder here. So we've made our own preset now. Okay, so now we've had a look at the interface of MassFX. In the next video, we're going to have a look at routing.